First contact and warning. The Solarian Republic was barely 50 years old when the Vexnar Empire discovered Earth. For half a century, humanity had been spreading cautiously through their solar system and beyond, establishing colonies on Mars, the moons of Jupiter, and recently, around Alpha Centauri. Their expansion was methodical, careful, nothing like the rapid, aggressive conquest that had built the Vexnar Empire over 3 centuries of domination across 12 star systems. High Admiral Zarketh stood on the command bridge of the inevitable conquest, his flagship and pride of the Vexnar fleet. His gray, scaled skin reflected the blue light of tactical displays, showing the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star. Preliminary scans complete, High Admiral, announced Sub-Commander Vextan. The planet shows significant technological development, but nothing that would pose a threat to Imperial forces. We detect approximately 200 orbital installations and evidence of colonies on their 4th planet and natural satellite. Zarketh's inner eyelids blinked in satisfaction. Life signs. Approximately 9 billion sentients on the home planet. They call themselves humans, and their world Earth. Their transmissions indicate they've only achieved interstellar travel within the last 5 decades. The High Admiral let out a low, rumbling laugh. Practically infants, have they encountered any other spacefaring species? None that we can detect from their communications. They appear to be isolated. Perfect. Keth turned to face his war council. This system sits at a strategic junction between the Orion and Perseus arms. Taking control of it will secure our western expansion for centuries. And if these humans have managed interstellar travel within just 50 years of space development, they may have technological innovations worth harvesting. General Krav Vos, commander of the Empire's ground forces, spoke up. What resistance should we expect? Minimal, replied Zarketh dismissively. A young species with limited space presence against the might of our battle fleet. Will follow standard protocol. A demonstration strike to destroy their largest military installation, then broadcast terms of surrender. And if they resist? Asked Admiral Zelfar. Zarketh's mouth twisted into what passed for a smile among the Vexnar. Then we do what we've done to every species foolish enough to resist the Empire. We break them. Within the hardened command bunker 2 kilometers beneath the lunar surface, General Maya Rodriguez watched the approaching alien fleet with an outward calm that belied her racing thoughts. 27 vessels, most larger than anything humanity had built, had dropped out of FTL at the edge of the solar system 3 hours ago. Composition analysis, she asked. Colonel Chen, her intelligence officer, expanded a holographic display. 21 warships of varying classes, 3 that appear to be troop carriers, and 3 we believe are support vessels. Based on their emission signatures and configuration, they're built for conquest, not exploration. Rodriguez nodded. And we're certain they haven't detected our defensive grid. Affirmative. The quantum camouflage is holding. They're scanning us with directed EM and gravitational sensors, but they're getting exactly what we want them to see. And the fleet. Admiral Takahashi's hologram appeared beside Chen's display. All vessels in position, General. Strike groups Alpha through Delta are in stealth deployment around Jupiter's moons. The Sol Defense Fleet is maintaining normal patrol patterns as directed. Orbital defense platforms are powered down to minimum signature levels. Rodriguez studied the alien fleet's formation. It was aggressive, confident, the approach of a predator that didn't expect resistance. She'd seen this before in human history, when technologically superior forces encountered what they believed were primitive opponents. They haven't responded to our hails. No, General, replied Chen. They've received them. We can detect scanner activity spiking each time we transmit, but they've chosen not to respond. Rodriguez straightened her uniform jacket. Very well. Send one final message, all frequencies, all languages in our database. Make it simple. Unidentified fleet approaching Earth territory. You are entering sovereign space of the Solarian Republic. Halt your approach and establish communication, or we will consider your actions hostile and respond accordingly." Chen relayed the order, and the message was transmitted. On the bridge of the inevitable conquest, Communications Officer Drevnar reported, "High Admiral, the humans are transmitting again. Should I ignore it as before?" Zarketh waved a clawed hand dismissively. "What does it say?" "It appears to be a warning to halt our approach." "A warning?" The High Admiral laughed, joined by several officers on the bridge. "Put it through. Let's hear these primitives' brave words before we crush them." The message played, translated by the ship's computers into the harsh, clicking language of the Vexnar. Zarketh's amusement only grew. They named themselves a republic. How quaint. Republics fall so easily, divided by nature, slow to act. He turned to his weapons officer. "Prepare a demonstration. Target their largest military installation on their moon. A single kinetic strike should suffice. Target locked. High Admiral." Fire. The inevitable conquest shuddered slightly as its main accelerator cannon launched a 2-ton tungsten rod toward the lunar surface, accelerated to a fraction of light speed. In the Lunar Command Center, alarms blared. "Kinetic projectile detected," shouted a sensor technician. "Impact in 40 seconds. Rodriguez didn't hesitate. "Activate Defense Grid Section Luna 3. Intercept Protocol Theta." On the dark side of the moon, previously invisible installations hummed to life. 3 sleek defense platforms pivoted, tracking the incoming projectile. Each fired a pulse of concentrated energy that bent spacetime around the projectile, disrupting its trajectory and essentially folding the space it occupied. The rod simply ceased to exist in normal spacetime. On the inevitable conquest, confusion spread across the bridge. "High Admiral," stammered the weapons officer. "The projectile. It's gone. No impact detected. It simply disappeared." Zarketh's inner eyelids snapped open in surprise. "Impossible. Launch a spread. 5 projectiles, different trajectories." "Yes, High Admiral." 5 more tungsten rods were launched. On screens throughout the bridge, officers watched as each disappeared before impact, just like the first. Zarketh's confusion quickly turned to anger. "Full scan. I want to know what technology they're using." The science officer worked frantically at her station. "High Admiral, I'm detecting energy signatures activating throughout their system. Signatures that weren't there before. They've been hiding their capabilities." For the first time, unease spread through the command bridge as the tactical display updated, showing hundreds of previously undetected installations and vessels throughout the solar system. On the lunar base, Rodriguez watched the aliens' confusion with grim satisfaction. "They've taken the bait. Open a direct channel to their flagship." A moment later, she stood before a holographic projector. The aliens would see her full image projected into their command center. The translator AI had analyzed their communications and prepared a linguistic package. "Attention Vexnar vessel," she began, the AI translating her words into the clicking, hissing language of the aliens. "I am General Maya Rodriguez of the Solarian Republic Defense Force. You have ignored our warnings and fired upon our territory. This is your final opportunity to withdraw. Reverse course immediately, or we will be forced to demonstrate our full defensive capabilities." On the inevitable conquest, the human's image hovered in the center of the bridge. Keth stared at the small, soft-looking creature addressing him with such authority. The audacity infuriated him. "This is High Admiral Zarketh of the Vexnar Empire," he replied. "Your primitive tricks do not impress us. The Empire has conquered 12 star systems and hundreds of worlds. Your species will submit or be destroyed. You have 1 planetary rotation to surrender unconditionally." Rodriguez's expression remained impassive. "You've made your choice, Admiral. Remember, we warned you." Her image disappeared, leaving the bridge in silence. Zarketh turned to his officers. "Prepare all vessels for combat. We will show these humans the full might of the Vexnar Empire. As the Vexnar fleet accelerated toward Earth, they failed to notice the subtle distortions in space around Jupiter's moons as hundreds of human vessels decloaked. They had evolved from prey species on a dangerous world and never lost the instinct to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. The Solarian Republic maintained a defense force that represented nearly 30% of their economy, not because they sought conquest, but because humanity's history had taught them that peace is guaranteed only through strength. The first indication that something was wrong came when 3 Vexnar cruisers at the edge of their formation suddenly exploded. "We're under attack," shouted the tactical officer. "From where?" demanded Zarketh. "Unknown. Sensors detect no incoming projectiles or energy weapons." 2 more vessels erupted in flames. "There!" A junior officer pointed at the display. "Small objects, approaching at high velocity from the direction of the gas giant." The science officer's voice shook. "There, they appear to be drones, thousands of them, too small for our primary targeting systems." Zarketh watched in horror as the swarm of human combat drones enveloped his fleet's outer vessels. The drones were no larger than a Vexnar's arm, but each carried a payload that could penetrate ship armor and detonate inside. His mighty warships were being taken apart piece by piece. "Launch fighters, all vessels, point defense at maximum," he ordered. The Vexnar fighters emerged from their carriers, only to be met by larger human vessels decloaking directly in their path. These weren't drones, but piloted craft that moved with impossible agility, as though inertia barely affected them. "High Admiral," the communications officer interrupted. "We're receiving transmissions from the human vessels." "Ignore them." "Sir, they're not addressing us. They're talking to each other. The translator is processing their communications." Curiosity overcame Zarketh's anger. "Let me hear." The bridge filled with the voices of human pilots. "Eagle 6, you've got 3 on your tail. I see them. Performing Crazy Ivan in 3, 2, 1. Nice move. Scratch 3 bogeys. All units, this is Hammer Actual. Remember the drill. Disable when possible. Command wants prisoners." "Copy that. Switching to EMP rounds." The casual confidence in the humans' voices chilled Zarketh more than their weapons. These weren't the desperate communications of defenders facing a superior force. They sounded like predators enjoying the hunt. As the battle escalated, it became increasingly clear that the Vexnar had made a catastrophic error. The humans had not just prepared for this moment. They had prepared with a thoroughness that bordered on paranoia. Every Vexnar tactic was countered before it was fully deployed. Every weakness in the human formation that Zarketh tried to exploit turned out to be a trap. 6 hours after firing the first shot, the inevitable conquest itself was surrounded, its engines disabled, weapons systems offline. More than half the Vexnar fleet had been destroyed or captured. A direct transmission came through to the bridge. General Rodriguez's image appeared again. "High Admiral Zarketh, your attack has failed. Your fleet is in ruins. Surrender now, and we will treat your survivors according to our laws of war, which guarantee humane treatment of prisoners. Continue fighting, and we will be forced to eliminate your remaining vessels." Zarketh, his pride in shambles, faced the most difficult decision of his career. The Empire had never surrendered, not once in 3 centuries. But he had also never faced an enemy like this. "How?" he asked simply. "How did primitives like you defeat the Empire's fleet?" Rodriguez's expression was almost pitying. "You assumed that because we're young to the stars, we would be easy prey. But on our world, Admiral, we evolved as both predator and prey. For thousands of years, we fought each other, developed weapons and defenses, strategies and counter-strategies. We've had nuclear weapons for nearly 2 centuries and haven't destroyed ourselves. Do you know how much restraint and planning that requires?" She leaned closer to the camera. "When we realized we weren't alone in the universe, we didn't rejoice. We prepared. because we know from our own history what happens when technologically advanced civilizations encounter less developed ones. We were determined not to be the less developed one when that meeting came. Zarketh stared at the small, soft-looking human who had orchestrated his defeat. And now you have a choice. Surrender and help us establish peaceful contact with your empire, or continue this battle to your destruction. Choose carefully, Admiral. This is just a small fraction of our fleet. As the remaining Vexnar vessels powered down their weapons, Zarketh realized that the galaxy had fundamentally changed today. The Vexnar Empire had finally met a species they could not conquer, one that might, in time, conquer them. The Empire's regret. Aboard the crippled inevitable conquest, High Admiral Zarketh faced the assembled remains of his command staff. Half the chairs in the war room stood empty, their occupants either dead or captured by the humans. The flagship's emergency systems provided minimal lighting, casting long shadows across the scaled faces of his officers. "Status report," Zarketh demanded, his voice devoid of its usual confidence. Admiral Zelfar, now his second-in-command following the death of his previous deputy, consulted his data tablet. 14 vessels destroyed, 6 captured, including 2 troop carriers. The remaining 7, including this flagship, have sustained critical damage. Engines are offline, long-range communications are severed, and weapons systems are at less than 30% capacity. Casualties. Zelfar's inner eyelids flickered, a Vexnar expression of distress. Approximately 65% of our total force. Many were not killed but captured when their vessels were boarded. A heavy silence fell over the war room. The Vexnar Empire had not suffered a defeat of this magnitude in its 3-century history. "The humans have established a perimeter around our remaining vessels," continued Zelfar. "They're maintaining position, but haven't attempted to board the inevitable conquest. Yet," added General Kravos bitterly, "they're waiting for our surrender." Zarketh's claws scraped against the metal table. "No Vexnar fleet has ever surrendered. No Vexnar fleet has ever faced an enemy like this," countered Zelfar. "High Admiral, with respect, we were deceived. Their technological capabilities far exceed our intelligence reports. Their quantum shielding alone is beyond anything in our database." The science officer, Miravex, spoke up. "It's not just their technology. Their tactics, their coordination. They fought as if they knew our protocols. Every standard Imperial formation was countered before we completed it. We underestimated them," admitted Zarketh. "But the battle is not over. We still have 7 warships. The hyperspace communicator in the auxiliary bridge can be repaired, if we can hold out long enough to call for reinforcements." "Reinforcements would take at least 14 cycles to arrive from the nearest garrison," interrupted Zelfar. "And that's assuming the message gets through whatever interference the humans are generating." Zarketh was about to respond when the ship's remaining functional viewscreen activated automatically. The human general, Rodriguez, appeared, her expression stern but composed. "High Admiral Zarketh, your vessels have been contained. Your situation is unsalvageable. I'm contacting you to offer terms one final time before we begin boarding operations." Zarketh straightened, his pride still intact despite his defeat. "The Vexnar Empire does not surrender, human." Rodriguez didn't appear surprised. "Then perhaps you'd like to see what you're choosing to sacrifice your crew for." The image changed, showing a vast starfield. It took a moment for Zarketh to recognize that he was looking at the space around Jupiter. As the view zoomed out, his inner eyelids widened in shock. Hundreds, no, thousands, of warships were decloaking, revealing a fleet at least 20 times the size of the force that had already decimated his own. "This is the main body of the Sol Defense Fleet," Rodriguez's voice explained as the image shifted again to show orbital installations around Earth, Mars, and throughout the asteroid belt. "And these are just our fixed defenses. We've been preparing for first contact with potentially hostile species since we first split the atom." The image returned to Rodriguez. Your empire has conquered 12 systems, Admiral. Impressive. Humanity has just one star system, but we've devoted more resources to defending it than you can imagine. We don't seek conquest, but neither will we be conquered. One of Zarketh's junior officers whispered, "It cannot be real. They must be projecting false images to intimidate us." Miravex shook her head. "No, Commander. The energy signatures are genuine. I've been analyzing the data from our long-range scanners since the battle began. Those ships were there all along, hidden behind some form of advanced stealth technology. What we faced was merely their vanguard." Rodriguez continued, "We've analyzed the remains of your vessels, Admiral. We understand your FTL technology now, and we're tracking the energy signatures that would indicate any approaching reinforcements. We know where your empire is located. We know your strengths and your weaknesses." For the first time in his career, Zarketh felt true fear, not just for himself or his fleet, but for the empire itself. "What are your terms?" he asked finally. "Unconditional surrender of all your remaining vessels. Your crews will be treated as prisoners of war according to our laws, which I assure you are humane by any standard. You will provide us with all information about the Vexnar Empire, its extent, its government, its military capabilities. In exchange, we will eventually repatriate your surviving personnel. And if we refuse," Rodriguez's expression hardened, "then we will be forced to eliminate your remaining vessels and piece together what we need from your wreckage and the prisoners we've already captured. I would prefer to avoid further bloodshed, Admiral, but that choice is yours." The transmission ended, leaving the war room in silence. "She's bluffing," insisted Kravos. "If they truly had such overwhelming force, why offer terms at all? Why not simply destroy us?" Zarketh stared at the blank screen. "Because they're not like us, General. The Vexnar conquer because it is our nature. We see weakness, and we exploit it. These humans," he paused, remembering Rodriguez's words, "they evolved as both predator and prey. They understand mercy as a strategic choice, not just a weakness." After a moment of contemplation, he turned to his officers. "Prepare the surrender protocols. Transfer all strategic databases to secure storage." Gasps and protests erupted around the table. "High Admiral, the Emperor will have you executed for this," exclaimed Kravos. "Perhaps," acknowledged Zarketh. "But if we die here, the Empire will have no warning of what they face. The humans know where our worlds are. They have our FTL technology. If the Empire blindly sends more fleets, they will meet the same fate, or worse, lead these humans directly to our homeworld." He stood, his decision made. By surrendering, we gain time. Time for the Empire to prepare, to learn about this new species, to perhaps find another approach besides conquest. As his officers reluctantly began carrying out his orders, Zarketh moved to the viewport, staring out at the human vessels surrounding his flagship. In the vacuum of space, a small shuttle approached, likely carrying the boarding party that would accept his surrender. "You were right, General Rodriguez," he murmured. "We should have heeded your warning." 3 days later, General Rodriguez stood in the observation deck of the lunar base, watching as teams of human scientists and engineers swarmed over the captured Vexnar vessels. The aliens' technology was advanced in some areas, their FTL drive particularly, but surprisingly conventional in others. They relied heavily on brute force approaches, powerful directed energy weapons, thick armor, overwhelming numbers. Admiral Takahashi joined her at the viewport. "The Vexnar prisoners are cooperating, more or less. Their hierarchy is strict. Once the High Admiral ordered their compliance, the rest fell in line." "And what have we learned?" asked Rodriguez. "The Vexnar Empire spans 12 systems and has conquered at least 30 different sentient species. Some they've enslaved, others exterminated, a few integrated as second-class citizens. They've been expanding for 3 centuries without meaningful opposition. Until now." Takahashi nodded. Their FTL technology gives us a map of nearby star systems. At least 2 other interstellar powers exist within 100 light-years, both apparently locked in cold wars with the Vexnar, neither aware of humanity's existence. Rodriguez considered this, and the Vexnar homeworld, about 30 light-years from here, the heavily militarized system with at least twice the fleet strength that attacked us. Takahashi paused. They'll send more ships once they realize this fleet isn't returning. Let them come, Rodriguez replied calmly. We'll be ready. There's something else you should know, General. Takahashi's expression grew troubled. According to prisoner interrogations, the Vexnar aren't the most aggressive species in this sector. They're just the most successful. There are others out there, some with technology more advanced than ours. Rodriguez turned from the viewport to face her colleague. Humanity has spent its entire history fighting, Admiral, mostly against itself. Since the nuclear peace 200 years ago, we've channeled that martial energy into preparation, not aggression. We built this defense force hoping never to use it. And now we know we're not alone, and that the galaxy is not the peaceful place we hoped for. She straightened her uniform. Prepare a briefing for the Security Council. We need to accelerate the Deep Space Defense Initiative and begin retrofitting our captured FTL technology to the fleet. As Takahashi left, Rodriguez returned her gaze to the stars visible through the viewport. Humanity had passed its first test against an interstellar threat, but it wouldn't be the last. The Vexnar had learned a painful lesson about underestimating humans, a lesson that would soon spread throughout the galaxy. Somewhere out there, other alien civilizations continued their lives, unaware that a new player had entered the galactic stage, a species that had honed its capacity for both war and peace through millennia of evolution and bitter experience, a species that extended a hand in friendship but kept the other near its weapon, a species that, when warned to back down, responded, "We're humanity. Make us." News of the Vexnar defeat spread quickly through encrypted channels across their conquered territories. On a dozen subjugated worlds, oppressed species looked to the stars with something they hadn't felt in generations: hope. The empire that had claimed nothing could stand against it had finally met its match. And in the darkness between stars, word of humanity's victory traveled further still, reaching ears and sensory organs for which humans had no conception. Ancient civilizations that had watched the Vexnar's meteoric rise with concern now turned their attention to a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. The galaxy was changing. Humanity had announced its presence, not with peaceful overtures or diplomatic missions, but with the decisive defeat of one of the sector's dominant powers. For better or worse, the stars would never be the same again.